Hi everyone, and welcome back. Tonight, we're diving into some of the most shocking, embarrassing, and unbelievable confessions shared on Reddit. These are the kinds of secrets people would never tell their friends, family, or even their closest partners, but somehow felt comfortable sharing with millions of strangers online. Some are funny, some are disturbing, and some might leave you wondering how they're even real. So, sit back, relax, and feel free to do something else while I read these confessions to you. Let's begin. Had an absolutely charming, incredibly smart-looking close friend for a few years. It took me about 1.5 to 2 years to find out everything about her life was a lie. Even the smarts. She'd read some detailed article on a subject and present ideas as if they were her own, but never knew anything deeper. Pretended to speak many languages by secretly watching a foreign movie with subs on, then translating some cool scenes to us. She made up a story about her father abusing her mom to make excuses for failing her uni exams, lied to people about being a medical student to look smart, and would give them very dangerous advice. Lied to her family about being a brilliant medical student. Don't know if they believed her. And about many, many other things. She was an incredibly fun person, but an awful toxic friend. Still, I was afraid she'd lose her mind completely if I revealed her secrets to everyone. So I only quietly told the people she was abusing or potentially putting in danger, so she couldn't do any damage anymore. Several times I tried to talk her into going into therapy, but I stopped. She was in complete denial about me knowing everything. I was so afraid she'd kill herself if she found out what everyone thought of her. One day she just packed her things, said goodbye with a hug and a huge smile on her face, and left for another country to pursue her medical studies. I've kept evidence of all the craziness, in case it comes back someday. I'd say that if you genuinely pay attention to people around you, you'll find out many creepy stories like this. Some people see friends come and go, and actually never have any idea of what's going on in their lives. One of my best friends since middle school opened up to me the day we had our last day of high school. We had been partying all day, got off at 10 a.m., but most people left at around 3 p.m. to go get ready for the seniors' dinner and after party and whatnot. My friend stayed behind with our class president. I told him I'd pick him up for the dinner and left. When I got back, both were falling down drunk and in tears. A few years earlier, our class prez had lost his father. I take my buddy back to his house so he can get changed for the dinner, and on the way, he tells me what happened. They had kept drinking when everyone left and eventually got to the topic of their dads. I had never met my friend's dad. He died, and that was all I knew. I never knew how he died. It turns out my buddy's dad was a lawyer or something in the country he's from and was being extorted by a gang. When money started to run out, my buddy's dad sent the family to another country and told them he'd meet them there, that he had to finish some things up. A few weeks after moving, they learned that he had been murdered by the gang. It completely fucked my friend up. We always used to drink heavily and whatever, since we were in high school. For me, it was just drinking. For my buddy, it was numbing the pain. It was fucking shocking when he told me this, and really made me understand him a lot more. Why he acted, how he acted. The 24 hours before my dad died, stage 4 lung cancer. He was in the ER, and then the ICU, and we were unable to be with him because of hospital COVID rules. My mother, sister, and myself had been texting and calling him all day and got no response. My mother even called the hospital and spoke with one of his ICU nurses who said he was awake and communicating fine. He passed very quickly at 3:30 a.m. the next morning. We were allowed to be at his bedside, but by then he was no longer conscious. So we said our goodbyes, and he was gone. Later that morning, while my mom slept, I was calling cremation services to schedule his body for pickup at the hospital, and going through his bag of belongings the hospital had returned to us. His phone was in there, and I wanted to read all our texts and take some comfort in my last words to him. I opened his phone, and all our texts had not been read. Not mine or my mom and sisters. I thought this was so odd, but figured he must have been suffering so much he couldn't find the strength. I began to scroll through his apps and noticed a chat app I'd vaguely heard of. I can't recall the name, but it essentially works like WhatsApp. I opened the app and saw a single contact with a female name. I started reading and realized my dad has been chatting with this girl hourly for the last 24 hours and as far back as I could scroll. He was calling her princess and telling her he loved her, and she was saying she was scared for him and wanted to know what was going on. Why was he in the ER, etc. I scrolled back enough to know that this was someone he was having at the very least an emotional affair with. My grief was completely hijacked by hurt and anger, and a week later, I tracked the girl down and spoke to her via DMS and found out she was 19 years old. She was 17 when they met. He was her high school bus driver, and she told me they had been dating for almost 2 years. My dad was 66 years old when he died, and dating someone younger than his grandchildren, someone he chose to spend his last moments with and say his last goodbyes to. I hope it made him happy, but it sure is a shitty secret to live the rest of my life with. A secret that will forever overshadow my entire relationship with my dad with no chance to ever speak to him about it. It's the one secret I wish I'd never found out. Personally, mine is so wacky it's hard to believe. I worked at a tech company with many tech bros, and they were having a prank war. At this point, the prank war had involved staplers and Jell-O, changing letters on keyboards, Nerf guns, and silly stuff. One day, a staff report shows up to my desk looking very, very guilty. We'll call him Anon. He sits across from me and confesses, "I think I've gone too far." I'm busy scanning my morning emails as I ask, "What do you mean?" Anon replies, "You know that scene last week in Game of Thrones?" At this point, I stop scanning my emails because, obviously, no work conversation should start with that question. Which one are we talking about? So, you remember how Brienne of Tarth, they had her in that, Colosseum thing. Kind of like how we have the MIS bullpen set up. Please tell me you did not acquire a bear. They didn't have adult bears available, so that's okay, right? At this point, I just paused to breathe because I wanted to laugh. I wanted to believe he was pranking me, but he was way too sincere. And then he held up the online confirmation email. Wait, who is they? Don't tell me. Stop showing me. I don't want to explain to the police. Fuck. I don't hear screams, so I assume it's not in the building. Now, when I put down the deposit, they said the bear wasn't free until next week. How do you even hire a bear? Don't answer me. Cancel it. Too far. Prank war is canceled. Why? Why would you think? Just why? He shrugged. It seemed funny last night. Then I got up this morning and started thinking about it and thought maybe you'd say no. Had to check, though. There's definitely no way. Immediate arrest. Were you high? Fair enough. Do I have to answer that? Hey, just in case they won't let me cancel, you may want to work from home on Wednesday. He did manage to cancel the bear, but did not get his deposit back. My mother has dementia and keeps saying her kids aren't really her kids. I think she's the only one who can still tell. The diagnosis came in the spring. Early onset, the neurologist said, which is a polite way of saying it shouldn't be happening yet, and they don't know why it is. My mother is 61. She still does the crossword in pen. She still remembers the words to songs from before I was born, every verse, while forgetting that she's already asked me 4 times whether I locked the car. So when she started in about my brother, we filed it under the disease. It started small. Danny came over for Sunday dinner the way he has every week for as long as I can remember, and Mom got quiet at the table. Wouldn't eat. Kept watching him cut his food. After he left, she grabbed my arm in the kitchen, hard enough to leave marks, and she said, "That's not Danny." I told her of course it was. She'd known him for 34 years. She made a sound I'd never heard her make before, and then she said it again, slower, like I was the one who was sick. "That is not my son." The neurologist had a word for it. Capgras. He said it almost cheerfully, the way doctors do when they get to name a thing. "It's a delusion," he explained, where the patient becomes convinced that someone close to them has been swapped for an identical imposter. The face is recognized. The feeling of familiarity is not. The wiring that says this is someone I love gets cut, and the brain, hating a gap, fills it with the only explanation that fits. Stranger. Copy. Imposter. "It's not uncommon," he said. "It can be distressing for families. Try not to take it personally." I took it personally. Here's the thing I didn't tell him. I didn't take it personally because she was rejecting Danny. I took it personally because of who she wasn't rejecting. She never said it about me. Through all of and it got bad. It got so bad. And she clung to me. When the home health aide came, Mom screamed that the woman was wearing somebody else's face. When my aunt visited, Mom wouldn't be in the same room. When Danny brought his kids, my mother, who used to keep a drawer of Werther's just for those grandbabies, looked at them like livestock and asked me quietly where the real ones were kept. But me, she knew. "Me," she pulled close. "Me," she whispered too. I let myself feel good about that. "You want to know the ugly truth? That's it." My mother was drowning and grabbing at strangers, and I felt chosen because the one face her broken brain still trusted was mine. I told myself it meant our bond was the deepest. I told myself love like ours was load-bearing, was the last wall standing. I want that on the record before I tell you the rest. I want you to know I was glad. The aides started quitting. 3 in 2 months. The agency stopped sending them. The last one, an older woman who'd done this for 20 years and didn't scare easy, pulled me aside on her way out and said she'd worked plenty of dementia cases, and this wasn't that. She wouldn't say what it was. She just said, "She's not confused about everybody. You watch who she's confused about. There's a pattern in it." And she got in her car. I didn't watch. Not then. I was tired in the way that doesn't have a bottom to it. The kind where you forget if you've eaten, where days lose their edges. I was sleeping at her place most nights, in my old room, under a ceiling I'd stared at as a kid. Danny took some shifts. My aunt took some. We had a calendar on the fridge with all our names on it in different colors, like a kindergarten. It was the calendar that did it, actually. That's so stupid. After everything, it was the calendar. I was standing at the fridge at maybe 4 in the morning, drinking milk out of the carton because nobody was watching. And I looked at the grid of our names, and I had this small, cold thought, the kind that arrives fully formed, like it had been waiting outside the door. I couldn't remember Danny's wedding, not the details, the whole thing. I knew he was married, Sarah, the kids, the house on Linden. I knew it the way you know a fact, but I couldn't find the day. Couldn't find myself in a dress. Couldn't find the church. Couldn't find the toast I must have given because I'm his only sister, and of course I gave a toast. There was a smooth place where the memory should be, like a scar that's healed so completely, you forget there was ever a wound. I told myself I was exhausted. People forget weddings. But I started checking, and the more I checked, the worse it got, because the gaps weren't random. They were load-bearing. I could remember the brand of cigarettes my father smoked 20 years dead, but not my brother's face at our mother's 50th. I could remember the smell of the lake house, but not who was in the boat. Every memory with Danny in it had this quality, like a photograph someone had described to me very well. Detailed, second-hand, inhabited by no one. I went and sat on the edge of my mother's bed. She was awake. She often was, at night. The disease took her clock first. I asked her, and I felt insane asking it, but still I asked her when she'd first noticed Danny wasn't Danny. She didn't treat it like a crazy question. That's what I'll never forget. She'd been treated like a crazy person for months by every person who loved her. And when I finally asked her straight, she answered me straight, lucid, as the day she taught me to drive. After the hospital, she said. When he came home from the hospital, he came home, and he was wearing Danny, but he wasn't Danny anymore. None of them were. They all went somewhere, and they all came back wrong. And everybody just kept on like they didn't notice. Like I was the crazy one. She looked at the dark window. It took your aunt next, then the babies, one at a time, and every time it happened, the ones who'd already turned would smile at me and tell me I was confused. My mouth was dry. I asked her why she was telling me all this, why she trusted me with it, when she didn't trust anyone. And my mother looked at me with so much love, so much tired, ruined, bottomless love. She reached up and tucked my hair behind my ear, the way she did when I was small and sick, and her hand was shaking. And she smiled at me, like her heart was breaking, in a place that had already broken a long time ago. "Oh, baby," she said, "I'm not telling you. I gave up on you years ago. You were the first one they took. You don't even know." She kept stroking my hair. "I just like to talk to you," she said, "because you sound exactly like her." I've been sitting in the kitchen since the sun came up. Danny's coming at noon to talk about moving Mom somewhere, with locks on the outside of the doors. He says it's for her safety. He keeps saying that, her safety, in a voice I'm only now hearing right. And I've been trying, for 6 hours, to remember one single thing from my own childhood that nobody ever told me about. One memory that's just mine, from the inside. I can't find one. So I'm asking you, whoever you are, because there's no one left in my family I can ask. I need someone outside of this to tell me my mother is sick, that this is the disease talking. The memories feel like that for everybody, secondhand and smooth. That it's normal. That it's nothing. Please. Before noon, tell me she's confused. Had a coworker come to the house. Drinks and smoke and all that good stuff. Then after everyone cleared out and it was just him and I, he got really weird and gave me a hug and whispered in my ear, "I hope this doesn't change anything, man. But I need to let you know that I've killed 2 people." I thought he was messing around, and when he left, I decided to search the name up. Sure as hell, dude had gotten out of prison just 3 years prior on murder charges. We're still cool till this day, and it seems like he's turned his life around and has become a pretty decent family man. but that night he told me that just sticks with me. Best friend's dad was planning to murder/suicide his family, but only God himself. My best friend's dad ate a shotgun about 20 years ago, after his wife left him. I wasn't there when the cops found and removed the body, but I did help clean up the crime scene, because nobody tells you that you're responsible for that, and crime scene cleanup crews are expensive, and prepped the house for sale. My friend and his family went through therapy for a while, and then they moved across the country to be closer to his mom's friends. But we kept in touch. A few years ago, they temporarily moved back into the area before settling in a neighboring state, and I helped them with the move. My friend hadn't arrived yet, so it was just me helping, basically a second mom. And when we stopped for lunch, she pretty much told me everything. Her ex-husband had been extremely abusive, but was really good at hiding it, so it took her over a decade to get out. The dad had bought a shotgun, updated the beneficiaries on his own life insurance policy, and took out policies on mom and all 3 of their kids, naming the aunt as beneficiary on all policies. He ate the shotgun a couple of weeks later. We think he had a last-minute change of heart about killing his kids, but we'll never know. They're all grown, some with families of their own, and they are quite happy as they are. So I don't think it will do any good to tell any of them. And I have no intentions of doing so. Their mom can, if she wants. When I was around 20 years old, I worked in a 24-hour service station at a truck stop. It was just me as the shift manager and one mechanic working overnights. He was ex-con that did time for selling drugs. Me and him came up with schemes to make money on the side, which included selling drugs to truck drivers and even working with prostitutes that would walk the lot selling themselves. I came up with a way to extort money by overselling services to the truck company, then altering it in our system so it would be recorded at a lower price. Then I would charge the lower cost, and all the extra money would come back as change, which I could record as a paid-out cash advance to the driver. Then I'd pay the driver a portion, and me, and the mechanic would split the rest. We got away with it for quite a while, doing 2 to 3 transactions like that a night for probably 4 months. We probably extorted around $60,000 that way. Add in the drug sales and the cut from the prostitutes. We probably made $80,000 to $100,000 in 4 months. One transaction finally got flagged, but they couldn't trace it back to any specific wrongdoing, so I was fortunately just fired rather than arrested. I am a guy. Bit of a long one, but anyways. Years ago, my girlfriend, we'll call Deb, and I were out with her friend, we'll call Sarah. This one day, Sarah had to pin unlock her phone each time to take one of many pictures. Out the corner of my eye, I saw her pin. I saved it in a note. Months later, Sarah and Deb were at my place and went to the pool. Sarah left her phone indoors. I used her password and hit jackpot. Nudes, videos, message logs with some guy she was talking, well, called Jeff too, along with tons of dick pics and videos of him jacking off. Now Deb was hot, but Sarah was a fat chick that worked her ass off and became 11 out of 10. With this gold mine of pics and vids, I concocted a slow plan. Very slow. Slowly I broke off with Deb, but kept in touch with Sarah. I then created an alter ego online, we'll call it Vanessa. For months I worked this identity so it looked real. This identity started following Sarah on all social media. Sarah accepted any friend requests. Vanessa blackmailed Jeff. Jeff was given 2 days to stop talking to Sarah, or his dick pics got leaked. He was chicken shit and dropped her like a hot potato. But Sarah was strong-willed. When Vanessa threatened Sarah to stop talking to Jeff or her pics get leaked, She protested, so I knew I had to change tactics. Vanessa disappeared for a while, until I could get Sarah's phone in my hands for a bit. One day, Sarah was over and lost her phone at my place. I found it for her the next day. Not before I installed a spy app that let me keep track of her everything. A few weeks later, Vanessa came back, but now armed with the conversations Sarah was having with everyone. While tracking Sarah's reactions and suspicions, I made it show that Vanessa wasn't real. Now all my friends know me as being pretty tech literate. One day I'm talking with Sarah and she breaks down crying, telling me how she'd been long-distance sexting this guy, and somebody hacked his or her phone, and now she's being blackmailed by some stranger she doesn't know. So she asks me if I could help her. Long ending short, I made it look like Jeff was Vanessa. I made it look like he created this person so that he could blackmail Sarah into fucked up sex stuff. Sarah left him. And guess who was the hero? Me. I caught Vanessa. Sarah was now safe because of me. Once we blackmailed the guy, Vanessa disappeared. You know, for realism. Sarah and I now had this tragedy, this hurdle that we overcame together. We started dating not long after. She was never going back to long-distance relationships and wanted to try local. 4 years later, we're married. I never leave comments, but this is very disgusting. Back when I was 8 years old, I had a very dark incident. It crosses my mind from time to time, but I still remember it pretty well. My family was very religious, and this was after church. I was a husky little church boy. I had my church clothes, and my black hair was slicked to the side. I wore these big, thick glasses. I hated wearing my church clothes as it was so uncomfortable. That day we learned about how Jesus would forgive all sinners, and if you were lucky you would get into heaven. Sometimes I would just draw little pictures of cartoons in church. I would get them taken away, but I didn't know any better. Why would Jesus care if I drew pictures of Bugs Bunny? Well, that was my life. After church, my mother wanted to stop at a local grocery store to pick up some stuff. I split from her to go check the comic books, but I felt like using the restroom. When I got to the restroom, this big Santa Claus-looking trucker pushed me aside. "Move it. I need a shit," he said in his deep, scratchy voice. This really upset me. I didn't have my mother to defend me. This man just shoved me out of the way. As the big man went into the stall, he was clearly having a hard time using the restroom. He kept moaning, and it sounded like he was in pain. The sounds were like as if a large animal was drowning. The smell was horrid and of death. I even gauged a few times. Now I was very upset, and I don't know what came over me. I knew I was probably going to hell for doing this, but this man had to pay. I first opened the door, then locked the bathroom from the inside so no one would get in. I then switched off the lights and closed the door. All I heard was, "Hey, what the fuck? Someone is in here. Hey, hey." I just left him there. There was no cell phones back when I was a kid, so this man was left in complete darkness. I left with my mother that day and had zero regrets. She doesn't know what I did. I will always be her innocent little boy. I am pretty sure Jesus would have wanted me to turn the other cheek, but I'll never forget his desperate screams. I'm a single mom in my mid-40s, and I've spent years trying to sort out my son's behavior. I've tried pretty much everything to get him on the right path, but he just wouldn't cooperate. Instead, he'd curse at me, throw things at me, and completely ignore anything I had to say. I realized how important it is for a boy to have a father figure in his life, but even that didn't help. He constantly clashed with my boyfriend and actually got into physical fights with him twice, which scared the hell out of me. I knew he had been bullying other boys in high school, but I had no idea how bad it really was. The only time the school contacted me was when a teacher told me he had broken another student's pen. I talked to him about it, but he didn't care, and since it was the first incident I heard about, I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. Things got much worse after he started college. About 6 months in, I got a call from the college telling me he and some of his new friends had physically assaulted another student. I was heartbroken. I literally had to beg the boy's parents not to press charges. A few months later, he and his friends were still bullying other students, not physically this time, but by stealing and breaking their belongings. I felt completely helpless because he simply didn't give a damn about what I said. Around that time, I met a guy through a dating app. Eventually, I opened up to him about the situation, and he suggested an idea. It was kind of trashy, but honestly, I was willing to try anything if it meant stopping my son from hurting innocent people. I do some modeling, but nothing too public. My Instagram account had always been private. This time, I made it public and started posting old modeling work I'd done for agencies, along with some pretty sexy content. I had already personally apologized to several of the boys he had bullied, and some of them followed my Instagram. I knew there was a good chance the posts would spread around campus. Within 2 weeks, almost everyone in his class knew about my Instagram. He was embarrassed and suddenly didn't want to face the same boys he had been bullying. He completely lost it. He smashed our TV, broke my phone, and destroyed a bunch of other stuff. Eventually, we made a deal. I'd delete my Instagram if he stopped bothering other students. He agreed immediately, and I deactivated the account temporarily, just in case he started his nonsense again. The downside was that the tables turned, and he became the one getting bullied. A couple of days later, he came home from college crying. As angry as I had been with him, seeing that broke my heart. I ended up helping him transfer to another college. It's been about 5 months since then, and honestly, he's a completely different person now. He's calmer, more respectful, and no longer causing trouble for anyone. I love my son, and I'm incredibly proud of the person he's becoming. Am I proud of the method I used to get there? Not really, but at the time I felt out of options, and somehow, for better or worse, it worked. That's all for today. Thank you for sticking around, and I'll see you next time.